The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Kensington Palace as Thomas Mitchell adjusted his black uniform and checked his watch. 23 years of service to the Royal Protection Unit had taught him to notice everything, yet nothing could have prepared him for what he would discover that Tuesday in September 2023. The discovery would shake the very foundations of royal security protocols and reveal a mother's desperate love hidden beneath layers of royal duty and public scrutiny. Thomas had been assigned to the Cambridge family's wing of the palace for nearly 8 years. He knew every corridor, every room, and every routine. Prince William and Catherine, now the Prince and Princess of Wales, maintained a relatively predictable schedule, but their children brought an element of unpredictability that kept security on their toes. Princess Charlotte, at 8 years old, was particularly known for her curiosity and adventurous spirit that often led her to explore areas of the palace that were supposed to remain off-limits. The morning started like any other. Catherine had left early for a charity engagement in Manchester, while William was attending meetings at Buckingham Palace regarding upcoming state visits. The 3 Cambridge children were in the care of their nanny, Maria Teresa Turian Barallo, a Spanish woman who had become an integral part of their household since Prince George's infancy. Thomas's shift began at 6 in the morning, and he conducted his usual sweep of the family's private quarters to ensure everything was secure before the household fully awakened. It was during this routine check that Thomas noticed something unusual. The door to Princess Charlotte's playroom, which was typically locked when she wasn't present, stood slightly ajar. The soft morning light filtering through the tall windows revealed that someone had been inside recently. Thomas approached cautiously, his trained instincts immediately alert. Royal children's rooms were supposed to be secured at all times when unoccupied, and any deviation from protocol required immediate investigation. As he pushed the door open wider, Thomas expected to find perhaps a forgotten toy or a housekeeping oversight. Instead, what he discovered would haunt him for months to come. Scattered across Princess Charlotte's child-sized desk were sheets of paper covered in careful drawings and markings. At first glance, they appeared to be typical childhood artwork, the kind of innocent sketches that any 8-year-old might create. But Thomas's trained eye recognized something far more significant and deeply troubling. The papers contained detailed floor plans of Kensington Palace, drawn with remarkable accuracy for a child her age. Every room was carefully labeled in Charlotte's neat handwriting, every corridor mapped with precision that suggested extensive exploration and observation. But what made Thomas's blood run cold were the red marks scattered throughout the drawings. Small red X's marked specific locations throughout the palace, connected by carefully drawn lines that traced paths from room to room. Thomas picked up the papers with trembling hands, his mind racing to understand what he was seeing. These weren't random childhood drawings. These were escape routes, meticulously planned and documented. Each red X marked what appeared to be an exit point, from obvious doorways to less conventional options like service elevators and even windows. The paths connecting them showed clear routes from various rooms in the family's private quarters to these exit points, with some routes marked as fast and others as quiet. But the most shocking discovery was yet to come. In the corner of one of the drawings, in Charlotte's careful script, were the words "for Mummy when she's sad." Below that, in even smaller writing, "secret ways out when the camera people are mean." Thomas's heart sank as he realized what he was looking at. This wasn't just a child's game or innocent exploration. This was Princess Charlotte's attempt to help her mother escape the crushing pressure of royal life and media attention. Thomas had witnessed firsthand the intense scrutiny that Catherine faced daily. Photographers camped outside the palace gates, telephoto lenses trained on windows, paparazzi following her every public appearance. He had seen the strain in her eyes during particularly difficult periods, the way she sometimes seemed to struggle with the weight of constant public observation. But he had never imagined that her 8-year-old daughter was not only aware of this struggle but actively trying to provide solutions. The complexity of the drawings suggested that Charlotte had been working on this project for some time. Some of the papers appeared older, with creases and smudges that indicated frequent handling and revision. She had clearly spent considerable time exploring the palace, learning its layout, and identifying potential escape routes. The level of detail was extraordinary for a child her age, showing passages that even some security personnel might not know existed. Thomas found himself in an unprecedented situation. His duty as a protection officer required him to report any potential security breaches immediately. The existence of these detailed palace maps in the possession of anyone, even a member of the royal family, represented a significant security concern. If these plans fell into the wrong hands, they could be used to plan intrusions or attacks. Yet he also understood the innocent motivation behind Charlotte's actions and the potential consequences for the young princess if her project became known to palace officials. As he studied the drawings more carefully, Thomas began to appreciate the sophisticated understanding of the palace that Charlotte had developed. She had identified service corridors that most visitors never saw, noted which doors were typically unlocked during certain hours, and even marked locations where security cameras had blind spots. Some of the exit routes led to parts of the palace grounds that were less monitored, while others connected to areas where Catherine might be able to slip away unnoticed during public events. The emotional weight of the discovery struck Thomas deeply. Here was a young girl who loved her mother so much that she was willing to undertake this elaborate project to try to give her moments of freedom and peace. Charlotte had somehow understood, with the clarity that children sometimes possess, that her mother needed escapes from the gilded cage of royal life. The annotations on the maps revealed a child's perspective on adult problems, with notes like "Mummy can sit here quiet" marking secluded garden areas, and "No picture people here" indicating locations shielded from photographers. Thomas realized that Princess Charlotte's project revealed something profound about life within the royal family that the public rarely saw. Behind the glamorous facade and carefully orchestrated public appearances lay very human struggles with privacy, freedom, and the simple desire to escape overwhelming attention. An 8-year-old had recognized her mother's pain and responded with the kind of practical love that only a child could conceive. The guard found himself facing a moral dilemma that his years of training hadn't prepared him for. Protocol demanded that he report the security implications of the maps immediately. Palace officials would need to know that detailed floor plans existed and assess whether any security measures needed to be updated. Yet doing so would inevitably lead to Princess Charlotte facing consequences for her unauthorized exploration of the palace and creation of the maps. Thomas sat in the small chair at Charlotte's desk, surrounded by her careful drawings, and tried to imagine the conversations that would follow if he reported this discovery through official channels. Palace officials would be alarmed by the security implications. Catherine and William would be concerned about their daughter's behavior and the potential dangers of her explorations. Charlotte herself would likely be restricted in her movements and face disappointing from the adults who were supposed to protect her. But, perhaps most significantly, Thomas recognized that Charlotte's maps represented something that adults had failed to provide, a recognition of Catherine's need for genuine privacy and escape. The young princess had identified a problem that the entire royal security apparatus had somehow overlooked or chosen to ignore. While protection officers focused on keeping threats away from the royal family, Charlotte had focused on giving her mother pathways to moments of peace and solitude. As Thomas carefully gathered the papers, he made a decision that would define the rest of his career and his relationship with the royal family. Rather than immediately reporting to his superiors, he decided he needed to understand more about Charlotte's project and its implications. He would need to investigate further, to determine whether the security risks were real or manageable, and to consider whether there might be ways to address Charlotte's concerns for her mother without destroying the innocent love that had motivated her actions. The morning sun had climbed higher, filling the playroom with golden light that seemed to illuminate the profound love and concern that had driven an 8-year-old princess to become an unlikely palace security analyst. Thomas Mitchell, veteran protection officer, found himself humbled by the wisdom and compassion of a child who had seen her mother's struggle and responded with practical action rather than mere sympathy. Thomas carefully folded Charlotte's drawings and placed them in his jacket pocket. He would need time to think, to plan, and to decide how to handle this discovery in a way that honored both his duty as a protection officer and his recognition of the love that had motivated Princess Charlotte's extraordinary project. The maps represented more than a security concern, they were a testament to a daughter's love and a window into the hidden struggles of royal life that the public never saw. As he locked the playroom door and continued his patrol, Thomas carried with him not just the physical maps but the weight of understanding what they represented. Princess Charlotte had created something remarkable in her innocent attempt to help her mother, and Thomas now faced the challenge of determining how to protect both the family he served and the security of the palace while honoring the love that had inspired such an unusual and touching gesture. The discovery would mark the beginning of a chain of events that would reveal the complexity of royal family life, the challenges faced by those who serve them, and the extraordinary lengths to which love will drive us to protect those we care about most. Princess Charlotte's maps were about to become the center of a story that would challenge everything Thomas thought he knew about duty, family, and the true meaning of protection. Thomas Mitchell spent the rest of that Tuesday morning in a state of internal turmoil that threatened to compromise his usually impeccable professional composure. The weight of Princess Charlotte's drawings in his jacket pocket seemed to grow heavier with each passing hour, and he found himself analyzing every routine security procedure through the lens of what he had discovered. Each corridor he patrolled, each room he secured, he now saw through Charlotte's eyes, imagining how an 8-year-old had methodically mapped these same spaces with such loving precision. By noon, Thomas had made a decision that went against every protocol he had learned in his 2 decades of service. Instead of immediately reporting the security breach, he would conduct his own investigation. He needed to understand the full scope of Charlotte's project, verify the accuracy of her maps, and, most importantly, determine whether her identified escape routes posed genuine security risks or whether they might actually provide useful alternatives for family privacy and safety. Thomas began his unofficial investigation during his lunch break, using his security clearance to access areas of the palace that Charlotte had marked on her maps. What he found both impressed and concerned him. The young princess had demonstrated remarkable observational skills and an intuitive understanding of the palace's layout that rivaled some of his colleagues who had worked there for years. Her notations about guard rotations were surprisingly accurate, and her identification of camera blind spots showed a level of awareness that was both impressive and troubling for an 8-year-old. The first route Thomas traced was one that Charlotte had labeled as the quiet path to the garden. It began in the family's private sitting room and wound through a series of service corridors that most palace residents never used. Charlotte had noted that these passages were typically empty between 10 and 11 in the morning, when most staff were engaged in their primary duties elsewhere in the palace. Thomas followed the route and found that it did indeed lead to a secluded section of the palace gardens, one that was largely hidden from the main grounds and offered natural cover from telephoto lenses. As Thomas walked this path, he began to understand the sophisticated thinking behind Charlotte's project. She had not simply mapped random routes through the palace, she had created a comprehensive system that took into account timing, staffing patterns, and privacy concerns. Each route was designed with specific purposes in mind, whether for quiet escape, quick movement between areas, or access to private outdoor spaces. The level of strategic thinking involved suggested that Charlotte had been observing and planning for months, possibly even longer. The second route Thomas investigated was marked as Fast Way to Car and showed a path from the family's private quarters to a service area where vehicles were sometimes parked away from the main courtyard. This route demonstrated Charlotte's understanding that her mother might sometimes need to leave quickly without the ceremony and attention that accompanied official departures. The path avoided the main reception areas and formal entrances where photographers and officials typically gathered, instead utilizing staff areas and service entrances that offered more discretion. Thomas's investigation revealed that Charlotte had essentially created an alternative navigation system for the palace, one that prioritized privacy and emotional well-being over protocol and tradition. Her map showed entrances and exits that bypassed formal reception areas, paths that avoided high-traffic corridors, and spaces where someone could find solitude away from the constant presence of staff and security personnel. It was as if she had designed a parallel palace, one where her mother could move freely without the burden of constant observation and performance. The most touching discovery came when Thomas followed a route that Charlotte had simply labeled Mummy's Thinking Place. This path led to a small alcove in one of the palace's historic towers, a space that had apparently been overlooked by modern renovations and remained furnished with a simple chair and small table. Charlotte had noted that this location was rarely visited by staff and offered a view of London that was both beautiful and private. She had even noted the best times of day for privacy and had drawn small hearts around this particular location, suggesting it held special significance in her mind. As Thomas sat in that small alcove, looking out at the London skyline through windows that Charlotte had determined offered privacy from external observation, he was struck by the profound love that had motivated the young princess's project. This wasn't the random exploration of a curious child, this was a systematic attempt to solve her mother's problem by creating options for escape and solitude. Charlotte had recognized her mother's need for privacy and had responded with the kind of practical action that adults often fail to take. Thomas's investigation also revealed the challenges that Catherine faced in her daily life within the palace. Following Charlotte's routes, he began to see the royal residence through different eyes. The constant presence of staff, the formal protocols that govern movement between rooms, the lack of truly private spaces where a person could simply exist without performance or observation. Charlotte's maps represented a child's solution to problems that the adult world had either failed to recognize or chosen to ignore. The security implications of Charlotte's project were complex. On one hand, the existence of detailed palace maps represented a potential risk if they fell into the wrong hands. The routes Charlotte had identified could theoretically be used by intruders to navigate the palace undetected. Her notations about staffing patterns and security camera locations contained information that could be valuable to anyone with malicious intent toward the royal family. However, Thomas's investigation also revealed that many of Charlotte's identified routes actually enhanced rather than compromised security. Several of her escape routes led to areas that were more secure than the main family quarters, offering better protection and more controlled access points. Her understanding of the palace layout had led her to identify alternative paths that could be useful in emergency situations, providing options for quick evacuation or movement that the official security protocols hadn't fully developed. Thomas found himself facing a professional crisis that challenged his fundamental understanding of his role as a protection officer. His job was to protect the royal family from external threats, but Charlotte's maps had revealed internal challenges that were equally important to the family's well-being. How could he protect Catherine from the emotional strain of constant scrutiny while maintaining the security protocols that kept her physically safe? How could he honor a child's loving gesture while fulfilling his professional responsibilities? The afternoon brought additional complications when Thomas noticed increased activity in the family quarters. Princess Charlotte had returned from her afternoon activities and was showing signs of distress that her primary nanny was having difficulty addressing. Through careful observation, Thomas realized that Charlotte was looking for her drawings. She had apparently planned to work on them after her lessons, and their absence was causing her considerable anxiety. Thomas watched from a discreet distance as Charlotte searched her playroom, her small face growing increasingly worried as she failed to find her project. The sight of her distress added another layer of complexity to his situation. Not only did he need to decide how to handle the security implications of the maps, but he also needed to address Charlotte's immediate emotional needs. The drawings clearly represented something important to her, and their disappearance was causing genuine distress. The situation became more complicated when Catherine returned from her Manchester engagement earlier than expected. Thomas observed the family reunion from his position in the corridor, noting Catherine's immediate attention to Charlotte's obvious upset. The interaction between mother and daughter was tender and concerned, with Catherine clearly trying to understand what was troubling her youngest daughter. Thomas realized that Charlotte's distress might inadvertently reveal the existence of her project, forcing his hand before he was ready to address the situation. Thomas made another decision that went against his training. Rather than allowing the situation to develop naturally, potentially leading to Charlotte's distress exposing her project in an uncontrolled way, he decided to return the drawings to her playroom. He would replace them exactly as he had found them, giving himself more time to determine the best course of action while alleviating Charlotte's immediate anxiety. The logistics of returning the maps without detection required careful timing and planning. Thomas waited until the family was occupied with dinner preparations, then used his security access to enter Charlotte's playroom. He carefully arranged the drawings exactly as he had found them, ensuring that Charlotte would discover them in their familiar positions. As he worked, he couldn't help but notice additional details in the maps that he had missed during his initial examination. Some of the drawings contained elements that suggested Charlotte had received help or guidance from someone else. Certain technical aspects of the floor plans were more sophisticated than he would expect from an 8-year-old working alone. The accurate scaling and precise architectural details suggested either remarkable natural ability or assistance from someone with more advanced knowledge of palace layout and construction. This possibility opened new questions about who else might be aware of Charlotte's project and what their motivations might be. Thomas also noticed that some of the maps contained notations in different handwriting, suggesting that Charlotte's project might be collaborative rather than solitary. While the primary drawings were clearly in Charlotte's neat script, there were occasional additions in what appeared to be adult handwriting. These additions included more technical security observations and suggestions for route improvements that demonstrated professional knowledge of surveillance and protection protocols. The discovery of potential adult involvement in Charlotte's project added new dimensions to Thomas's dilemma. If other palace staff or security personnel were aware of the maps and had contributed to their development, the situation was more complex than he had initially realized. It suggested that Charlotte's concerns about her mother's privacy and well-being were shared by others who worked closely with the family, people who had chosen to help rather than report her unauthorized activities. As Thomas completed the replacement of the drawings and secured Charlotte's playroom, he realized that his discovery had revealed layers of concern and care for Catherine that extended beyond a single child's loving gesture. The maps represented a network of people who recognized the emotional challenges of royal life and were willing to take risks to address them. His investigation had uncovered not just a security issue, but evidence of a support system operating outside official channels to protect Catherine's emotional well-being. The evening brought a sense of relief when Thomas observed Charlotte's joy at rediscovering her drawings. Her distress evaporated immediately, replaced by the focused concentration of a child returning to an important project. Thomas watched discreetly as she spread the maps across her desk and began making new additions, her small face serious with concentration and purpose. The sight reinforced his understanding that this project represented something profoundly important to her, something that went far beyond childhood curiosity or play. Thomas ended his shift that day with a clear understanding that his discovery had revealed challenges and complexities within the royal family that extended far beyond his initial training and expectations. Princess Charlotte's maps were more than a security concern, they were evidence of love, creativity, and problem-solving that deserved serious consideration rather than immediate dismissal as inappropriate behavior. His investigation had revealed both risks and opportunities, and he knew that his next steps would require wisdom that went beyond standard security protocols. As he prepared his shift report that evening, Thomas faced the ongoing challenge of how to document his day's activities without revealing what he had discovered. He had bought himself time through his investigation and careful return of the drawings, but he knew that the situation would require resolution soon. The maps represented a reality that couldn't be ignored indefinitely, and Thomas would need to find a way to address both the security implications and the emotional needs that had motivated Charlotte's remarkable project. The following morning brought an unexpected complication that would force Thomas Mitchell to confront the full implications of his discovery sooner than he had planned. As he arrived for his early shift at Kensington Palace, Thomas was informed that there would be increased security protocols for the next several days due to intelligence reports of potential paparazzi attempts to breach palace grounds. The heightened security measures would include additional personnel, modified patrol routes, and enhanced surveillance of all entrances and exits. Thomas realized immediately that these changes would directly impact the routes that Princess Charlotte had so carefully mapped for her mother's use. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on him. Here was the official security apparatus implementing measures designed to protect the royal family from external intrusion, while an 8-year-old had already identified the very vulnerabilities and alternative pathways that could provide both security and privacy solutions. Charlotte's maps suddenly took on new relevance as Thomas considered how her identified routes might actually enhance the family's safety during periods of heightened threat assessment. Thomas's morning patrol revealed additional evidence of Charlotte's ongoing project development. During his routine check of the family quarters, he noticed that new security equipment had been installed in several corridors, including cameras and motion sensors that hadn't been present the day before. These additions would directly affect several of the routes that Charlotte had marked as safe or quiet on her maps. The young princess would need to update her careful documentation to account for these changes, assuming she became aware of them. The morning also brought Thomas face-to-face with Catherine herself in a way that highlighted the very privacy challenges that Charlotte had been trying to address. As he conducted his security sweep of the garden areas, Thomas encountered the Princess of Wales attempting to find a quiet moment alone with her morning coffee. She was seated in a secluded corner of the palace grounds, but even there she was visible to palace staff moving between buildings and was clearly conscious of being observed. Her posture and demeanor suggested someone who was trying to create privacy in a space that offered little genuine solitude. Thomas observed Catherine's situation from a professional distance, but his new understanding of Charlotte's project made him see the scene through different eyes. Here was a woman who couldn't even enjoy a quiet cup of coffee without being aware of security personnel, palace staff, and potential photographers with telephoto lenses trained on the palace grounds. The simple human need for solitude and privacy that most people took for granted was a constant challenge in her daily life. The encounter made Thomas realize that Charlotte's maps weren't just the product of a child's imagination or desire to help her mother, they represented a sophisticated understanding of real problems that affected Catherine's daily well-being. The young princess had identified genuine needs and had attempted to provide practical solutions that the adult world had somehow failed to address adequately. Thomas's contemplation was interrupted by the arrival of Detective Inspector Sarah Williams, a senior member of the Royal Protection Unit who had requested a meeting to discuss the enhanced security protocols. Sarah had been with the unit for 15 years and had a reputation for thoroughness and attention to detail that made her both respected and slightly feared by her colleagues. Thomas realized that his unofficial investigation of Charlotte's maps would need to be handled carefully if Sarah became involved in any aspect of the family's security arrangements. The meeting with Detective Inspector Williams took place in the palace's security office, a room filled with monitors, communication equipment, and detailed floor plans of the palace and grounds. As Sarah outlined the new protocols and threat assessments, Thomas found himself studying the official palace maps displayed on the walls and comparing them mentally to Charlotte's hand-drawn versions. The 8-year-old's maps contained details and routes that were absent from the official security documentation, suggesting that her extensive exploration had revealed aspects of the palace that even security professionals hadn't fully catalogued. Sarah's briefing included information about recent paparazzi activities that had prompted the enhanced security measures. Photographers had been using increasingly sophisticated equipment to capture images from greater distances, and there had been attempts to use drones to photograph private areas of the palace grounds. The intelligence suggested that some media organizations were specifically targeting Catherine, seeking candid photographs that would command high prices in the international market. As Thomas listened to Sarah's briefing, he realized that Charlotte's project had anticipated these exact concerns. Many of her identified routes avoided areas that would be visible to elevated positions outside the palace walls, and her notations about camera people suggested an awareness of surveillance threats that matched the current intelligence reports. An 8-year-old had identified security vulnerabilities that were now being addressed by professional intelligence assessments. The briefing concluded with assignments for additional patrol duties and modified security protocols that would affect Thomas's daily routine. As his colleagues filed out of the security office, Thomas lingered, studying the official maps and making mental comparisons to Charlotte's versions. He found himself in the uncomfortable position of knowing information that could potentially improve security protocols but being unable to share it without revealing Charlotte's unauthorized activities. Sarah noticed Thomas's continued attention to the maps and approached him with the kind of professional curiosity that had made her successful in protection work. She asked if he had noticed anything unusual in his recent patrols or if he had any concerns about the current security arrangements. Thomas found himself at a critical decision point, knowing that a direct question from a senior officer required a truthful response while still needing to protect Charlotte's project from immediate exposure. Thomas made a careful decision to provide Sarah with general observations about palace security without revealing the specific source of his insights. He mentioned that his recent patrols had suggested some areas of the palace might benefit from enhanced monitoring and that there appeared to be routes through the building that weren't fully accounted for in the official security documentation. He suggested that a comprehensive review of all possible pathways through the palace might be worthwhile, particularly in light of the current threat assessment. Sarah's response revealed both her professionalism and her intuitive understanding that Thomas was holding something back. She agreed that a comprehensive security review would be valuable and suggested that Thomas compile a detailed report of any observations or recommendations he might have. She also mentioned that she would be conducting her own assessment of palace security over the coming days and would welcome input from officers with extensive experience in the building's daily operations. Thomas realized that Sarah's planned security review would inevitably bring attention to the very areas and routes that Charlotte had documented in her maps. The timing created both opportunity and risk. If he could find a way to incorporate Charlotte's insights into the official security assessment without revealing their source, he might be able to improve palace security while protecting the young princess from consequences for her unauthorized exploration. The afternoon brought Thomas into closer contact with the Cambridge family as they navigated their daily routines under the enhanced security protocols. He observed Charlotte's growing awareness that something had changed in the palace's normal operations. The 8-year-old was clearly intelligent enough to notice the additional security personnel and modified procedures, and Thomas could see her processing these changes with the same analytical thinking that had produced her detailed maps. Thomas watched discreetly as Charlotte tested some of her usual routes through the palace, noting which ones were now monitored or blocked by additional security measures. Her disappointment was evident when she discovered that one of her favorite quiet paths was now regularly patrolled by additional personnel. The sight reinforced Thomas's understanding that Charlotte's project served real emotional needs and that the enhanced security measures, while necessary for protection, were further limiting the family's options for privacy and normalcy. The situation became more complex when Thomas observed Charlotte sharing her concerns with her mother. He couldn't hear the specific conversation, but he could see Charlotte pointing toward areas of the palace and Catherine listening with the kind of serious attention that suggested she understood her daughter was sharing something important. The interaction suggested that Catherine might be becoming aware of Charlotte's detailed knowledge of the palace layout, even if she didn't yet know about the formal mapping project. Thomas found himself hoping that Catherine's growing awareness of Charlotte's insights might provide an opportunity for the family to address privacy concerns through official channels. If Catherine understood that her daughter had identified genuine problems and potential solutions, she might be willing to work with security personnel to implement changes that could benefit everyone involved. The day's events culminated in an unexpected encounter between Thomas and Charlotte herself. As he conducted his evening security check, Thomas found the young princess in her playroom, working intently on updates to her maps. She looked up as he entered, and Thomas saw in her eyes the kind of serious intelligence that reminded him she was much more than a typical 8-year-old. Charlotte's direct gaze and mature demeanor suggested that she was aware Thomas had discovered her project. Rather than showing fear or guilt, she seemed to be evaluating whether he could be trusted with her important work. The moment stretched between them, filled with mutual recognition of the significance of what lay spread across her small desk. Thomas made a decision that would define his relationship with the Cambridge family for years to come. Rather than maintaining professional distance or reporting Charlotte's activities immediately, he quietly asked if she needed any help with her project. Charlotte's response was immediate and earnest. She explained that she was trying to help her mother find quiet places where she could be alone when she felt sad or overwhelmed. The conversation that followed was unlike anything in Thomas's professional experience. Charlotte explained her project with remarkable clarity and sophistication, describing how she had noticed her mother's struggles with constant attention and had decided to map alternative routes that could provide privacy and escape. She showed Thomas specific routes she had developed for different purposes: quick exits during overwhelming situations, paths to private outdoor areas, and routes to rooms where Catherine could have genuine solitude. Charlotte's explanations revealed the depth of her understanding of her mother's emotional needs and the practical challenges of royal life. She had observed that Catherine sometimes needed to cry privately, sometimes needed fresh air without photographers, and sometimes simply needed a few minutes alone to collect her thoughts. Her maps were designed to address each of these specific needs with practical solutions that took into account security concerns and palace protocols. Thomas found himself profoundly moved by Charlotte's combination of love, intelligence, and practical problem-solving. Here was a child who had recognized adult problems and had responded with sophisticated solutions rather than simply feeling sorry for her mother. Charlotte's project represented the kind of care and attention to detail that professional problem-solvers strive to achieve, but it was motivated by pure love rather than professional obligation. As their conversation continued, Thomas realized that Charlotte's maps represented an opportunity to improve both security and family well-being if they could be properly integrated into official protocols. The young princess had identified genuine vulnerabilities and solutions that could enhance rather than compromise palace security. Her insights could potentially contribute to a more sophisticated understanding of how to protect the royal family while also supporting their emotional and psychological well-being. The evening ended with Thomas making a commitment to Charlotte that would change both their lives. He promised to help her improve her maps by sharing professional insights about security and palace operations, while also working to ensure that her mother's needs for privacy and solitude could be better addressed through official channels. Charlotte's response was immediate gratitude mixed with relief that an adult finally understood what she was trying to accomplish. Thomas left the palace that evening carrying the weight of a new responsibility that went far beyond his official duties. He had become a collaborator in an 8-year-old's mission to improve her mother's quality of life, and he knew that this collaboration would require him to navigate complex professional and ethical challenges. Charlotte's maps had revealed problems that the adult world needed to address, and Thomas was now committed to ensuring that her loving insights would be translated into meaningful improvements for the entire Cambridge family. The partnership between Thomas Mitchell and Princess Charlotte evolved over the following weeks into something unprecedented in the history of royal security operations. What began as a guard's discovery of a child's drawings had transformed into a collaborative effort that would fundamentally change how the Cambridge family experienced privacy and security within Kensington Palace. Thomas found himself operating in uncharted territory, balancing his professional obligations with his commitment to supporting an 8-year-old's mission to improve her mother's emotional well-being. Thomas's first step in formalizing their collaboration was to help Charlotte understand the professional aspects of security and palace operations that could enhance her mapping project. During carefully timed encounters in her playroom, always when other family members and staff were occupied elsewhere, Thomas shared insights about patrol schedules, camera locations, and the practical considerations that affected movement through the palace. Charlotte absorbed this information with remarkable focus and immediately began incorporating professional-level detail into her maps. The evolution of Charlotte's drawings under Thomas's guidance was extraordinary to observe. Her naturally keen observations, enhanced by professional insights, produced maps that rivaled official security documentation in their accuracy and exceeded them in their understanding of privacy and emotional needs. Charlotte's routes began to include precise timing information, alternative options for different threat levels, and sophisticated understanding of how to move through the palace in ways that maintained both security and discretion. Thomas was particularly impressed by Charlotte's ability to think strategically about her mother's various needs for privacy. She had categorized different types of escape routes based on Catherine's emotional state and circumstances. There were quick sat exits for when Catherine became overwhelmed during public events, thinking walks that led to secluded outdoor areas where she could process difficult situations, and happy hiding spots that offered privacy for positive family moments away from constant observation. The collaboration required extreme discretion from both Thomas and Charlotte. They developed a communication system that allowed them to coordinate without attracting attention from other palace staff or family members. Charlotte would leave subtle signals in her playroom to indicate when she needed to discuss updates or changes to her maps, while Thomas would find opportunities during his security rounds to provide guidance and feedback on her planned routes. Their partnership faced its first major test when Detective Inspector Sarah Williams began her comprehensive security review of the palace. Sarah's methodical approach to evaluating all aspects of palace security meant that she was likely to discover many of the same routes and vulnerabilities that Charlotte had identified. Thomas realized that the security review presented both an opportunity and a risk, an opportunity to incorporate Charlotte's insights into official protocols, and a risk that Charlotte's unauthorized exploration would be discovered and result in restrictions on her activities. Thomas made the strategic decision to begin preparing Sarah for the possibility that valuable security insights might come from unexpected sources. During their regular briefings, he began mentioning observations about palace layout and security vulnerabilities that he attributed to his own extended experience and careful observation. He gradually introduced concepts that originated from Charlotte's work without revealing their source, laying groundwork for more significant revelations if they became necessary. The situation became more complex when Catherine herself began to show increased awareness of security arrangements and privacy options within the palace. Thomas observed several instances where Catherine seemed to be testing alternative routes through the building, moving in ways that suggested she had received guidance about areas that offered more privacy. Her behavior indicated that Charlotte might have begun sharing some of her discoveries directly with her mother, creating additional layers of involvement in the project. Thomas's observations of Catherine's movements revealed the profound impact that enhanced privacy options were having on her daily well-being. When she used routes that Charlotte had identified as offering better discretion and solitude, Catherine appeared more relaxed and confident. The ability to move through her own home without constant awareness of observation was clearly providing emotional benefits that went beyond simple convenience. The collaboration between Thomas and Charlotte reached a new level of sophistication when they began developing contingency plans for various scenarios that might affect the family's security or privacy needs. Charlotte's analytical mind, guided by Thomas's professional experience, produced detailed procedures for different types of situations: media attention spikes, security threats, family crises, and even positive events that might require discreet celebration away from public scrutiny. One of their most innovative developments was a communication system that would allow Catherine to signal her privacy needs without having to explicitly request them. Charlotte had observed that her mother sometimes hesitated to ask for space or solitude, either because she felt guilty about needing privacy or because she didn't want to inconvenience security personnel. The system they developed allowed Catherine to indicate her emotional state and privacy needs through subtle signals that Charlotte could observe and respond to by suggesting appropriate activities or locations. The effectiveness of their collaboration became evident during a particularly challenging period when intense media attention followed reports of tension within the royal family. Thomas observed Catherine struggling with the increased scrutiny and pressure, while Charlotte monitored her mother's emotional state with the kind of attention that only a loving child could maintain. When Catherine reached a breaking point during a particularly difficult day, Charlotte was able to suggest a walk to one of their identified private areas, providing her mother with the exact type of escape and solitude she needed. Thomas watched from a professional distance as mother and daughter walked together to a secluded garden area that Charlotte had identified as offering both security and privacy. The sight of Catherine's shoulders relaxing as they reached the hidden alcove, and her grateful hug of her daughter who had provided this refuge, confirmed for Thomas that their collaborative project was achieving its intended goals. Charlotte's maps were more than theoretical exercises, they were providing real solutions to genuine problems. The project faced new challenges when Prince William began to notice changes in his family's routines and privacy options. William's background in military service and search and rescue operations had given him a keen awareness of security procedures, and he began asking questions about the modifications in family movement patterns and the apparent improvements in Catherine's ability to find private time within the palace. Thomas realized that William's investigation could lead to discoveries that might complicate their carefully maintained discretion. Thomas decided that the time had come to begin preparing for the possibility that the collaboration would need to be revealed to other family members. He began having careful conversations with Charlotte about how they might explain their project to her father and whether she felt ready to share her work with other adults who cared about her mother's well-being. Charlotte's response showed remarkable maturity. She understood that their project might need to become less secret but was determined to ensure that her mother continued to receive the privacy support she needed. The situation reached a turning point when Sarah Williams completed her security review and requested a meeting with Thomas to discuss her findings. Sarah had discovered many of the same routes and vulnerabilities that Charlotte had identified, and she had developed recommendations for security improvements that closely paralleled the solutions that Thomas and Charlotte had been implementing. The convergence of professional security assessment with Charlotte's intuitive understanding created an opportunity for integration that Thomas had been hoping to achieve. During his meeting with Sarah, Thomas made the careful decision to reveal selected aspects of his collaboration with Charlotte. He explained that he had been working with the young princess to help her understand security procedures and that her observations had provided valuable insights into palace layout and family privacy needs. Sarah's initial surprise quickly gave way to professional appreciation for the practical value of Charlotte's work and recognition that the 8-year-old's insights could enhance rather than compromise security protocols. Sarah's reaction to learning about Charlotte's mapping project was more positive than Thomas had dared to hope. Rather than viewing it as a security breach or inappropriate behavior, Sarah recognized it as evidence of exceptional intelligence and care that could contribute to improved family protection. She requested to see Charlotte's maps and was immediately impressed by their accuracy, detail, and sophisticated understanding of security considerations. The meeting between Sarah and Charlotte, carefully arranged by Thomas, marked the beginning of a new phase in the project. Sarah's professional validation of Charlotte's work provided official recognition that the 8-year-old's insights were valuable contributions to family security rather than unauthorized activities that needed to be stopped. Charlotte's pride in having her work recognized by a senior protection officer was evident, but, more importantly, she was relieved that her mission to help her mother could continue with official support. Sarah's integration into their collaboration brought new resources and capabilities that enhanced the project significantly. Her authority to modify security protocols meant that Charlotte's identified routes could be officially incorporated into palace procedures, providing Catherine with privacy options that were both secure and sanctioned. The collaboration expanded from a secret partnership between a guard and a princess to a professional security initiative that had the backing of senior leadership. The transformation of Charlotte's project from secret maps to official security enhancements represented a victory for everyone involved. Catherine gained access to privacy and solitude options that were both effective and secure. Charlotte received recognition for her intelligence and care, along with assurance that her work would continue to benefit her mother. Thomas found professional fulfillment in supporting innovative approaches to family protection that went beyond traditional security concepts. The project's evolution also revealed the broader implications of Charlotte's work for understanding royal family life. Her maps had identified needs and provided solutions that the adult world had somehow overlooked or inadequately addressed. The 8-year-old's success in improving her family's quality of life suggested that listening to younger perspectives and creative approaches could enhance traditional problem-solving methods. As the fourth phase of their collaboration concluded, Thomas reflected on how Princess Charlotte's simple desire to help her mother had evolved into a sophisticated security and privacy enhancement program. What began as drawings in a child's playroom had become a model for how love, intelligence, and professional support could work together to solve complex problems. Charlotte's maps had revealed that sometimes the most innovative solutions come from the most unexpected sources, and that age and formal training are less important than care, observation, and commitment to helping others. The collaboration had also strengthened the bonds between all participants, creating relationships based on mutual respect and shared commitment to family well-being. Thomas had found new meaning in his protection duties, Sarah had discovered innovative approaches to security planning, and Charlotte had learned that her care for her mother could be channeled into practical action that made a real difference. The project represented a rare example of how personal love could enhance professional effectiveness, creating solutions that served both emotional and security needs simultaneously. 6 months after Thomas Mitchell first discovered Princess Charlotte's carefully drawn palace maps, the impact of her project had rippled throughout Kensington Palace in ways that none of the original collaborators could have anticipated. What began as an 8-year-old's loving attempt to help her mother find privacy had evolved into a comprehensive reimagining of how royal families could balance security needs with emotional well-being, setting precedents that would influence royal protection protocols for years to come. The formal integration of Charlotte's insights into official palace security procedures had required careful navigation of institutional protocols and traditional approaches to royal protection. Sarah Williams had worked tirelessly to present Charlotte's discoveries in professional terms that emphasized their security value while honoring their origins in a child's love for her mother. The result was a new category of security planning that Sarah termed family wellness protocols, which recognized that emotional and psychological well-being were integral components of effective protection. Charlotte herself had grown tremendously throughout the process, developing from a concerned daughter into a confident young analyst whose insights were genuinely valued by adults in positions of authority. Her regular meetings with the security team had become opportunities for her to share observations about family life that helped security personnel understand the human dimensions of their protection responsibilities. Charlotte's unique perspective as both a family member and a keen observer provided insights that purely professional assessments couldn't capture. The transformation in Catherine's daily experience within the palace was profound and visible to everyone who worked closely with the family. The availability of genuine privacy options had reduced the constant tension that came from being perpetually observed, allowing her to move through her own home with greater freedom and confidence. Staff members noted that Catherine seemed more relaxed and engaged, better able to handle the demands of royal duties because she had access to restorative private time when needed. Thomas had found his role evolving from traditional protection officer to something more like a family wellness coordinator, helping to ensure that security protocols supported rather than hindered the emotional health of those he was sworn to protect. His relationship with the Cambridge family had deepened beyond professional duty to include genuine care for their personal well-being and happiness. The trust they had placed in him by accepting his collaboration with Charlotte had created bonds that went far beyond typical security arrangements. The success of Charlotte's project had attracted attention from other royal households and protection units who were interested in understanding how innovative approaches to privacy and security could be implemented in their own contexts. Sarah Williams had been invited to present their family wellness protocols to security conferences, where the integration of emotional intelligence with traditional protection methods was generating significant professional interest and discussion. However, the project's success had also brought new challenges and responsibilities that required ongoing attention and refinement. The routes and procedures that Charlotte had developed needed constant updating as palace operations evolved and security threats changed. What had once been a simple mapping project had become an ongoing program that required regular assessment and modification to maintain its effectiveness. One of the most significant developments was the expansion of Charlotte's analytical work to include her brother's needs and patterns. Prince George, now showing his own awareness of privacy challenges, had begun contributing observations about family dynamics and security procedures. Prince Louis, though still young, was being prepared to understand the importance of family privacy and the special considerations that governed their daily lives. Charlotte found herself in the role of teacher and guide, helping her younger brother understand concepts that she had discovered through her own experience and observation. The project had also revealed unexpected talents and interests in Charlotte that suggested possible future directions for her development. Her analytical skills, spatial intelligence, and ability to think systematically about complex problems indicated potential for contributions to security, architecture, or strategic planning fields. Adults who worked with her were consistently impressed by her ability to think several steps ahead and consider multiple variables simultaneously. Thomas often marveled at how Charlotte had maintained her essential childhood happiness and innocence while developing such sophisticated understanding of adult challenges. Her success in helping her mother had not made her overly serious or burdened with adult responsibilities. Instead, it had given her confidence that her ideas and actions could make positive differences in the world around her, a lesson that would likely influence her approach to challenges throughout her life. Catherine's awareness of Charlotte's role in improving her quality of life had led to conversations between mother and daughter that strengthened their relationship in unexpected ways. Catherine had come to understand that Charlotte's project represented not just practical help but profound love and attention to her emotional needs. The recognition that her 8-year-old daughter had noticed her struggles and had taken action to address them had been both humbling and deeply moving. The relationship between Catherine and Thomas had also evolved as they worked together to support Charlotte's development while ensuring that her insights continued to benefit family well-being. Catherine's gratitude for Thomas's recognition and support of Charlotte's project had created a level of trust and communication that enhanced the effectiveness of all security arrangements. When protection personnel understood and cared about family emotional needs, their ability to provide comprehensive protection was significantly enhanced. Prince William's integration into the project had brought additional perspectives and capabilities that strengthened its overall effectiveness. His military background provided strategic thinking that complemented Charlotte's intuitive insights, while his role as a father gave him deep motivation to support innovations that benefited his family's well-being. William's endorsement of the project had provided institutional validation that helped overcome any remaining resistance to non-traditional approaches to royal protection. The project's influence had extended beyond the immediate family to affect relationships with palace staff and officials who had come to understand that supporting family emotional needs was an important component of their professional responsibilities. Housekeeping staff, administrative personnel, and other support workers had been briefed on the importance of respecting family privacy needs and had become active contributors to maintaining the effectiveness of Charlotte's identified routes and spaces. The media attention surrounding the Cambridge family had actually decreased somewhat as Catherine's improved privacy options allowed her to appear more confident and relaxed during public engagements. When people had access to genuine private time, they were better able to handle public responsibilities with grace and authenticity. Charlotte's project had demonstrated that privacy wasn't about hiding from responsibility but about maintaining the emotional resources necessary to fulfill public duties effectively. Looking toward the future, the collaboration had established principles and procedures that would continue to benefit the family as the children grew and their needs evolved. Charlotte's maps had created a foundation for understanding how physical space could be used to support emotional well-being, concepts that could be adapted to different life stages and changing circumstances. The project had also established precedents for listening to family members' insights and incorporating their perspectives into security planning. Thomas's career had been permanently changed by his experience working with Charlotte and integrating her insights into professional security practice. He had discovered that effective protection required understanding and addressing emotional and psychological needs as well as physical threats. His reputation within the Royal Protection Unit had grown as other officers recognized the value of his innovative approaches to family security and his ability to build trust with the people he was assigned to protect. Sarah Williams had used her experience with Charlotte's project to develop new training programs for protection officers that emphasized the importance of understanding family dynamics and emotional needs. Her work had begun to influence protection protocols beyond the royal household, as security professionals in various fields recognized that comprehensive protection required attention to psychological and emotional well-being as well as physical safety. The lasting impact of Princess Charlotte's mapping project extended far beyond its immediate practical benefits to represent a new understanding of how love, intelligence, and professional collaboration could work together to solve complex problems. Charlotte had demonstrated that age and formal training were less important than careful observation, creative thinking, and genuine care for others. Her success in improving her family's quality of life had created a model for how individual initiative could contribute to institutional improvements. As Thomas reflected on the months since his initial discovery of Charlotte's drawings, he was struck by how a child's simple desire to help her mother had revealed inadequacies in professional approaches to family protection and had provided solutions that enhanced rather than compromised security effectiveness. The project had demonstrated that the most innovative solutions often came from unexpected sources and that listening to diverse perspectives could improve outcomes for everyone involved. The collaboration had also revealed the profound impact that individual actions could have on institutional practices and family well-being. Charlotte's decision to map escape routes for her mother had eventually influenced security protocols, professional training programs, and the daily experiences of multiple royal households. Her example suggested that caring attention to others' needs, combined with creative problem-solving, could produce changes that extended far beyond their original scope. Princess Charlotte's maps had become more than navigation aids, they had become symbols of how love could inspire practical action, how children's perspectives could enhance adult understanding, and how professional excellence could be achieved through genuine care for the people being served. The 8-year-old who had wanted to help her mother find quiet spaces had ended up transforming approaches to royal family protection and demonstrating the power of combining emotional intelligence with professional expertise. The story of Charlotte's project would continue to evolve as the family grew and their needs changed, but the fundamental principle she had established would remain, that privacy and security could work together rather than in opposition, that family emotional needs deserved professional attention and support, and that innovative solutions could emerge when people were willing to listen to unexpected sources of wisdom and insight. Her maps had charted more than physical routes through Kensington Palace, they had mapped new approaches to understanding how love, intelligence, and dedication could work together to improve the lives of those we care about most.